अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to another episode of NL Hafta. Raman Kirpal is on leave. I will introduce the panel, but before that I want to plug a special episode that we did last week, which went online this week, which was a crossover of South Central and Hafta, where the team from News Laundry, which consisted of Manisha and myself, and the team at News Minute that consisted of Pooja and Dhanya had a chat with Kunal Kamra, who was much in the news a month ago, on stand-up comedy, the limits of stand-up comedy, free speech, satirizing politicians, etc., etc. So do catch that. Here's a little clip from it. You'll really enjoy this conversation. George Carlin had said, Kunal, that it is the duty of the stand-up comedian to see where the line is drawn and then cross it deliberately.
Because in Indian context, where we are in our lives today, just quitting your job and doing comedy is crossing that line. To be provocative, where you divide the audience opinion by 50-50, that's a good start.
With politicians, we have had a culture of lampooning. We have had a culture of very strong commentary against politicians. They're never shown as good people through films, history, pop culture. What's happening today is very specifically political, the targeting of comedians like Kunal. And it's a huge contribution to this is journalists who fail to call out the politics of what's happening.
The media, I think we have a good name for them. I think it's called Lashkar-e-Noida.
Yeah. For you, political comedy, because, I only consume Hindi and English. How robust is it in Tamil, Malayalam?
I was born and brought up in Kerala, and I've seen that even TV news channels there, even today, they have these half-an-hour comedy political satire shows where they make fun of every politician possible. In, I think, harsher terms than perhaps what Kunal also used.
And I think a few Kannada channels also at the beginning would have these caricaturish shows where they'd mock everybody, and then, at the end of the day, it would still be those punchlines would have messages. But I think now somehow the primetime anchors have replaced any kind of comedy shows. So
real legendary comedians they didn't peak at 25, 28. They peaked at 60, 55, when they really had a thought through position on community, on caste, on, just the society we live in. Here, everyone wants to peak in the early 20s. And that's why sometimes they end up saying stupid shit.
But what I've noticed is there is two types of comedian. One whose relevance keeps them working, and the other one whose work keeps them relevant.
You have a QR code on your screen right now. You can scan that and pay to keep news free. Become a subscriber. Take a joint News Minute, News Laundry subscription. We are an ad-free platform. We are both ad-free platforms because we believe when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. And please do your bit and support journalism. Now, let me introduce the panel. Anand Vardhan is a little late. He'll be joining us soon. But because we like to start on time, we are starting on time at 11 a.m. on Friday, the 16th of May. Manisha Pande.
Hello.
And joining us, our guest today is Dinakar Peri.
Hello.
Most of you have probably seen Dinakar Bana, his famous question.
Yes, that Amit Malviya made famous.
Why did Amit Malviya make it famous?
Because I think he just retweeted and saying, how dare he ask this question or whatever. This is standard BJP stuff. But of course, the answer was important and it was acknowledged as such.
So can you give a number of assets we lost? Because there's been a lot of speculation going on. International media writing a lot of things about our platforms, including Rafales. Pakistan claiming that Rafale has been downed, etc. Can you put that question to rest and clarify on that?
All right. I'm happy that you've asked this question. We are in a combat scenario, and losses are a part of combat. The question that you must ask us, and indeed that we must ask ourselves, you inclusive, is have we achieved our objectives? Have we achieved our objective of decimating that terrorist camp? And the answer is a thumping yes. And the results are for the whole world to see.
So, Dinakar is Senior Associate Editor with The Hindu. He covers defense and security issues. He is a Chevening Journalism Fellow. He was an Associate Fellow at the Center for Land Welfare Studies. and worked on special projects with the Center for Joint Warfare Studies. So thank you for coming. The link to his report is in the show notes below. You can press it and you will get a pop-up where you can read his report in the Hindu. But before we discuss the implications as far as defense and I guess somewhat foreign policy is concerned, let's get the headlines from Manisha.
After 5 days of escalating tensions between India and Pakistan, both nuclear nations on May 10th announced a ceasefire and agreed to stop all firing on land, air, and sea at 5 p.m. According to India, the Pakistani DGMO had called his Indian counterpart at 3:35 p.m. earlier in the day and agreed to this. The announcement by the Indian Foreign Secretary, however, came minutes after US President Donald Trump claimed that the ceasefire talks were mediated by his administration. And since he's been very belligerent in this claim that he has come in, he's saved the day.
He said that
Papa
5-6
has
times.
stopped the war. Yeah, he said it 6 times, I think, since then, in different places, suggesting that he'd be willing to mediate. Also that India, Pakistan, they should go out for dinner together. Won't it be nice? So it's just been the most wild card entry ever. 21 Indian civilians, including 5 children, lost their lives in Jammu and Kashmir in 4 days of military action. This is as per our police and district officials. 5 members of the Indian Armed Forces were also killed in action between Wednesday and Saturday. The centre on Thursday announced that the security clearance for Turkish ground handling firm Silbi Airport Services has been revoked with immediate effect over interest of national security. And there's been a lot of calls for boycott, don't go there for tourism. JNU and Jamia Millia also suspended MOUs with Turkish educational institutions. The X accounts, meanwhile, of Chinese state-run news outlet Global Times and Turkish public broadcaster TRT World were blocked and then unblocked within hours on Wednesday. Amid the ongoing Indo-Pak conflict, there was another casualty. Several media outlets and journalist accounts were blocked last week, including The Wire, Outlook, BBC Urdu, Maktoob Media. Journalists like Anuradha Bhasin and Muzammil Jalil also had their X accounts blocked.
But theirs haven't been
Revoked?
The blocking hasn't
the
been
blocking
revoked
has
yet.
been unblocked.
But the Wire's website
Yeah.
was back up, but they had to remove that one article, right?
Wire's ban was strange because some people could access it, some couldn't. Outlook also, I think within a day it was, kind of blocked in the morning, but by the evening you could see it. The Madhya Pradesh High Court on Thursday said it will monitor the police's investigation against BJP leader Vijay Shah for his remarks targeting Colonel Sofia Qureshi. He had said that to teach terrorists a lesson, Prime Minister Modi had sent the sister from their own community.
My
Some
God.
very ridiculous
Yeah.
stuff.
And of course, the High Court took cognizance of it.
Which
was
was
Supreme
very
Court,
nice.
But the party has not kicked
Yeah.
him out yet.
The party should have just kicked him out.
But,
Shouldn't
but
have.
members of his party, lady members of his party have sprung up to his defense in his state.
Well, Justice Bhushan Ramakrishna Gavai was sworn in as the 52nd Chief Justice of India. Gavai succeeds Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna, who retired on Tuesday. He will have a tenure of just 6 months. Maybe Anand can weigh in on this when he comes.
Yes.
Chief Justice of India Sanjeev Khanna has written to the President and Prime Minister, forwarding the report of the 3-member committee probing allegations against the former Delhi High Court Judge Justice Yashwant Verma, from whose residence a large sum of cash was recovered. The letter also includes Justice Verma's response to the findings. But we don't know the contents of the letter.
No.
So, sealed cover. President Draupadi Murmu sought the Supreme Court's opinion about its ruling on April 8 that set timelines for governors and the President to grant assent to bills passed by legislatures, which MK Stalin criticized.
Yeah.
Indian police have killed 31 suspected Maoist rebels in what is being described as the biggest ever operation against the long-running insurgency. Security forces spent 21 days attempting to capture the rebels along the border of states of Chhattisgarh and Telangana in central India. The ED has arrested one of the owners of a leading Gujarati daily newspaper, Gujarat Samachar, on charges of financial fraud late last night, which is Thursday night. The details of the charge is not fully known, but the family said they're being targeted for being critical of the government. It's a very, very prominent newspaper of Gujarat. In fact, during COVID, I remember them putting up some very strong headlines and stories about mismanagement.
And also, there were IT raids on several other premises before the ED action took place.
Yes. So, new data from the country's official record of births and deaths show that 21 lakh more deaths were registered in 2021, the year of the deadly Delta wave of COVID-19. The number is about 6 times the official Indian COVID-19 death toll for 2021. 10 suspected Kuki militants were killed in a gunfight with a unit of the Assam Rifles in the district of Chandel in Manipur. Meanwhile, President Trump just said that he told Apple's chief executive officer Tim Cook not to expand the technology company's production in India. Share markets jumped on Monday after President Trump said weekend talks had resulted in total reset in trade terms between the US and China, a move which goes some way to diffuse the high-stakes standoff between the two countries. He also said that India has rejected all...
Which India refuted. But this is a 90-day pause. After that, I mean, probably they'll come to a more permanent arrangement of the Indo-Chinese trade barriers or tariffs. But on this, what Trump said to Tim Cook, Kangana Ranaut, the ever alert BJP MP, posted a critical...
No, it was very, very... Did you read what she wrote?
Yeah, she trashed Trump.
He's jealous of the real alpha male. Some nonsense.
Yeah,
complete.
and then she deleted that and posted that.
JP Nadda ji asked me to delete.
JP Nadda ji asked me to delete this tweet, so now I'm deleting this tweet. Dear God, it's like having an errant child who keeps embarrassing you. Right. So, with that, Dinakar, first of all, you have suddenly become very famous because you asked the question, you dared to ask the question, and there was a press conference of the Chief of the Air Force. Is that correct?
That was the Director General Air Operations.
But there were 3 people on the podium, right?
So the DG operations of the 3 services were there.
Okay, so they were there, and
DG Military Operations, DG Air Ops, DG Naval Operations.
Yes.
I see. So there were all 3 there, and you asked that what is the damage that we have?
Any loss for combat assets, if any, because there was a lot of news going on.
But you didn't really get a clear answer on that.
It was quite, I mean, he gave quite a sharp answer, I would say. Because he said quite a few things without, actually really saying it, citing operational reasons, which is fair enough. But, it actually good to have something on record, which was the whole point.
So now, I mean, we'll get into the whole what this means militarily. I mean, I don't know if there are any winners, losers, quote unquote, but what really it means for the Indian defense establishment and to some extent foreign policy. But before that, just at a level of the concept or what journalism should serve, because there has been this, the BJP tweeted this Sushant Sinha, the nutter, saying that people are accusing us of fake news. हमने क्या fake news फैलाई? Did we do fake news that Indians have lost? We did fake news that Pakistan has been bombed.
ऐसे लड़ेगा हमारा भारत। और मैं तो एक सवाल पूछता हूँ कि अगर एक आध खबर गलत चल भी गई तो क्या तूफान आ गया? किसी चैनल ने ये तो गलत खबर नहीं चला दी थी कि पाकिस्तान भारत में घुस गया है। किसी ने ये तो नहीं चला दिया था कि पाकिस्तान ने भारत के पोर्ट तबाह कर दिए हैं। किसी ने ये तो नहीं कह दिया था कि भारत के फाइटर जेट्स तबाह कर दिए हैं। भारत के खिलाफ तो खबरें नहीं चल रही थी। भारत का मनोबल तो नहीं तोड़ रहा था यहाँ का मीडिया। तो तकलीफ क्या हो गई?
I mean, the most bizarre explanation of fake news, and the BJP is tweeting it, that this is a part of somehow, making the Indian establishment stronger, I just don't understand how it works.
PSYOPs. They were claiming it's PSYOPs.
So, I mean, conceptually, forget India, Pakistan, anything. It could be US in Iraq or Afghanistan or, Russia and Ukraine. Or is it, in your view, problematic for the media of any nation to be questioning what are the losses, what is actually happening, reporting things as they actually happen? Because this is a debate that's come up now. Earlier, I remember New York Times, even the most liberal of newspapers in the US, came under intense criticism because of how they misreported on the Iraq invasion. They claimed weapons of mass destruction. They claimed that there was evidence. Of course, there was no evidence.
They created a consensus for America to go in.
Yes.
Basically.
Now, it suddenly appears that it is somehow a journalist's job is to create fake news or just tamasha to become cheerleaders for the military. But is it also damaging to really accurately report what is happening? Where do you see journalism? What role does it play in a conflict situation?
See, nowadays, the bigger part of journalists is to actually decipher the real news from the fake news. I mean, we actually spend a lot of time because social media goes to a different level. I mean, the chatter on. So I mean, you don't know, because it goes in circles. After a point, it gains some certain amount of truth, and people just go with it. Especially because there's absence of information. You don't get information coming in. So need not necessarily be operational details. I mean, fair enough. There are operational sensitivities because an operation is ongoing. You can't say it. Understood. But you at least need to know a yes or a no sometimes. Whether it's happening, yes. Then you can wait. You can definitely, okay, for sure it's happening, so you'll wait. Or if it's not happening, it's no, so it's actually fake news, it's wrong. But we can't, as regular journalists who mainstream journalists, we can't put out something if we don't know it's not correct. So then I wait. Then social media goes to a different level because there's no one to counter that. So that also kind of adds to the problem, and this is a new age problem probably which I have not seen in the past conflicts.
Pre-internet it didn't exist.
Not even probably even 10 years back. Probably this was not, the social media was not so much.
Right.
It has not gone to a different
sure
level altogether. That actually complicates things to a different level. In sense, again, as I said, we spend a lot of time trying to find what is correct. More than that takes a lot of time and effort for most of us. I mean, I'm sure, especially in situations like this.
So, because then, the regular public doesn't know who to turn to, where to turn to for accurate information.
And they believe in what's coming on their social media.
I think
whether it's WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook, Instagram. Someone does a reel and puts something and people believe it. And that same person is saying 4 times, so they believe it. Has more followers, so they start believing it.
Right.
Yeah.
When I get a lot of messages from my friends, relatives or anywhere saying, "Oh, is this correct? Have you done this?" I said, "Okay, wait."
How hard was it this time for you as a journalist? I mean,
it was really, because after the 6th, the initial action on the night of the 6th and 7th, May 6th, the initial hit, the strikes, the 9 targets were hit. Then there was action literally every single night, the next 3 days, 7th, 8th and 9th. And then the 10th morning when there was a kind of a retaliation from the Indian side. And kind of then things, kind of settled down in the evening. The conversation happened. 5 o'clock, the understanding to stop all firing came into effect at 5 p.m. And of course, there was a violation right after in 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's a different thing, but things kind of settled down then. But those 3 days, the 4 days, the chatter on social media was a different level. I mean, probably the highest so far in such a situation compared to say 2016, 19. It has gone to a different level altogether.
So, Manisha, you did a couple of nuisances on this.
Yeah.
I mean, are you shocked at the brazenness of people like Sushant saying that what we did was great?
Yeah, firstly, I think that this is really a turning point, and we've said this many times, but I really think this time the level of disgust with television news among an ordinary citizen really reached a level which I haven't seen before, because I think people really craved clarity at this point. War or conflict is a jittery situation for most people. There may be some who find it exciting, but for most average citizens, they want clarity, they want an understanding of what's happening, and that was completely missing. So a lot of people had to turn to PIB. For example, the army in the middle of operations was putting out fact checks to what these channels were doing. There were clarifications coming from within army, from within the government in the middle of an operation saying that, no, this is not true, this is not true. So that's a complete disservice. So I don't know how you're helping operations. Secondly, this thing of PSYOPs. We actually did a very good piece on this also, and everyone should read it. PSYOPs are directed at enemies. They're not directed at your own people, drowning them down in misinformation. So Pakistan was laughing at the fact that there's an attack in Karachi, and they were sending videos from there that, bhai, we are sleeping very well. Whereas Indians were wondering what's happening. So PSYOPs happen, and they're an important part, but they're strategic, they're intelligent, they are not easily debunkable lies that are put out. And certainly what we saw channels do was not PSYOPs. Secondly, I think your question of what is the role of a journalist in a conflict situation or in war. Let's go with the assumption that you have to be nationalist, okay? For those 4 days, for those 5 days, you have to go with what the country narrative is and you have to aid in whatever way.
I disagree with that, but yeah,
but
let's
I'm
go
saying
with
let's
it for
go
now.
with it. Even if you're going with that, the main, what has the nationalist media achieved? Have you been able to convince the world of our position? No. There were intense Pakistani shelling that happened where we lost civilian lives. none of these channels focused on the fact that while we had done precision strikes on terror camps, Pakistan had been shelling our own civilians. Instead, you saw channels demonize our own civilians who lost lives in Pakistani
In
shelling,
fact,
calling them terrorists.
Have they apologized for that?
No.
There's a report on Newslaundry,
Yeah.
you can read it. There was a family who at least 2 channels called as terrorists who were struck.
Yeah.
And they haven't...
CNN News 18. News 18 Hindi has apologized, but CNN News 18's Rahul Shivshankar, who held a whole panel discussion on, look, POK, we have, destroyed this terrorist. No apology, nothing. So you have not been able to convince the world that we are victims. The official government of India line is that these are precision attacks. We don't want war. And we are responding to a crime or a terrorist attack that happened on our soil. All that was lost, and all that the world saw of us was this belligerent sort of, through the media at least, what we put out was that we are the aggressors. And that we are the ones who kind of want war or want to destroy Lahore or destroy Karachi. So you're not even going with the government line. And nationalist media, typically you would expect them to go with the government line of what is official and what's being put out and do propaganda accordingly. This was just defeating the government line.
And they're also causing, foreign...
And you're causing
relation
panic
issues
within your own country. So I don't see how PSYOPs should affect us. It should affect the enemy, not us. So it's just...
Again, you have a take on... Do you buy the PSYOPs theory, or is it just... They were just hysterical buffoons in studios
Engagement
jumping around,
farming.
and now they are trying to give it some intelligent spin that we are part of PSYOPs. At least I have spoken to a few people in the military and some in the establishment who are like, dude, we don't want them on our side. Just thank you. We don't want your support. But clearly there are some people who do.
We can do without you.
But by putting out the right facts, or you see, again, drawing the line between operational sensitivities versus asking questions or putting out things. See, asking questions is one. Two, the system does not want to say, it's fine. I mean, the point is, asking is still
part of
your job. What comes in, at least there's certain level of thing which comes on record, sort of authenticated at a certain level, which is good. The point of this thing was that.
Right.
So what the response was, the Air Marshal gave a very sharp response. At least someone said it, because that was not said.
It had not been articulated.
There was so much happening.
Everything was speculation.
So much being said. At least there's now some definitivity to it, what he said. So that actually cleared a lot of air. That was the whole idea.
And
it will be revealed in due course.
Yeah.
Then we'll wait for it. That's okay. But at least it came from the highest level. I mean, from the military man who's handling the situation.
But you never know. Maybe Sushant or something have a different take. They have access. What do you make of it? I know you don't watch TV, but if you did, we had apparently bombed Karachi. We had raided Islamabad. Half of Pakistan was under Indian control.
I think one very troubling piece of misinformation that Aaj Tak had aired and which really set panic buttons off was that there's been a Fidain attack at an army post. That I remember very quickly, because also families are watching this, no? People who's like soldiers and whoever are engaged in this, their families are watching. So it sets off a lot of panic. That I remember very quickly. Within an hour, there was
it's
a lot
also
of...
about the international narrative. For example, even when Balakot happened, 2019, see, the strike happened. I mean, Balakot used again, more or less kind of the same precision guided munitions were used to a large extent. You did a very, very precise hit. You don't have some images were given of satellites, so you only see a mark on them because they are meant to. That's what they're meant to be. They are precision guided munitions. They're meant to hit in a certain way. If it's like all over the place, then you don't pay for the amount of money for that munition, right?
Yeah.
So it did what it did. The point was the narrative went off into a different spin, and the world does not believe even today that you did something.
Yeah.
So
our credibility is gone.
Exactly. You have actually done something. See, there are two different parts. One is the military action part of it, then how it's perceived by the world, as what India has done. So that actually went for a spin because the debate went into a different direction.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of claims
everything was
being
flying, again, everything adds to, one thing adds to the other, everything was flying on social media. So the real, the messaging got lost.
Of course, the messaging is the establishment's job. I mean, it's up to them how they... Yeah, but even...
I'm saying even as a country, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So as a country, what is the larger message that kind of, in a way, went off?
Which
even
is...
as a country, we don't debate that. Even as a country, even as citizens, we don't debate the real significance of that. We were talking about how many were killed or what happened, or it was in a different direction.
I think there are two ways of looking at it. First is that the pressure on, say, all forms of media as well as social media to over articulate or over inform the limited things we know or think about. So, one could be this, which is applicable to all. A second is the motives, the TRP motives, or to be aligned to a particular narrative. So, there are two ways of looking at it. Uh, means the government also can have its say propaganda arms, official arms, like say to counter the Pakistani propaganda around 92 93. The Doordarshan had this channel, and that was on the recommendation of a committee of the MEA, DD International. So its primary objective was to then, if you go back to 90s newspapers, was to counter the Pakistani propaganda on international stage. But I don't think, even if it is existing, it is not visible. DD International, I don't know whether it's existing or not. Maybe it is. So these two things. Now, in a very calibrated way, a lot of, say, international media arms also do. So you saw what conspiracy theories were aligned to the Nord Stream case, or even Al Jazeera got this very wrong, that an Indian pilot was captured. It was fake news. So maybe other media organizations also get it wrong, but this was, I think, both motives. TRP, as you said, that many government agencies would also not like this kind of propaganda. So one could be the TRP, which of course like it trumps all other considerations, like say the propaganda. Other one thing that both miss, whether it's propaganda or anti-propaganda, or everything is a propaganda of a different kind, say two different kinds of propaganda, is that they infantilize the media consumer. So I think media consumer is not like he's watching just one channel or just
They're flipping channels.
or they're flipping channels also on social media, and most of them know that the credibility is here, is it is dubious or it is not. So I think that this infantilizing of say media consumer is wrong on their part. So for any media organization, not only, I think media consumer has multiple sources. He is not living in, say, 2000 or 2005 or 2006. Second is like the tone. Even if you are doing very false propaganda or falsehoods, you need not be dramatic. You have to be serious. If you are doing it in a melodramatic tone, like you are yourself shouting and screaming, nobody is going to take you seriously. And similarly, if you are critiquing it in a very dramatic fashion also, or say very snarky way, that also does not have the same effect. I would like I would like to conclude it with a point. Shiv Shankar Menon, our former foreign secretary, was addressing foreign service officers, and he said a point which I generally agree to, that why do you think the diplomats and bankers wear very smart suits and they are very sharply dressed? Because you don't need to send a message of seriousness, like you are trusting your money to the banker. You are trusting with your money, trusting him, so he does not have to look very casual. He has to give a message of seriousness. Similarly, diplomats, you are trusting him with decisions of war and peace. He has to look very sharp and serious. So even if you are peddling falsehoods, you have to look serious. In a Times Now studio, and say, what is the other channel, Republic, or say, the way they were peddling falsehoods, it was very dramatic. So they were not very meant to be taken very seriously.
Well, I mean, if they all wear suits, so that is something that they've got right. I think that's a
Or
very
at
old-fashioned
skins.
way of
Not
I
suits.
also I think
No,
the
you
whole
are
suit
no,
thing.
no, no, don't
Oh,
get lost
yeah, I
in
understand
the
that.
metaphor of suits. Means
Yeah.
what he was trying to
Yeah.
say is
So
he had a theory about that.
So a couple of things, what you said that the establishment may not want them on their side. I didn't use the word establishment. I said certain individuals in the establishment. I think the establishment is okay with it because the establishment didn't want it. They have enough tools at their disposal to shut down these channels like they shut down certain websites. So I would like to distinguish today, establishment means Modi Shah. That is establishment. Establishment has been reduced to two individuals. I can tell you for certain senior officers in the army and people within the government as well are disgusted with this, but they don't have the guts to say anything because the establishment is okay with it. Individuals are not. So that is one distinction. And I would not club propaganda and fake news under one bucket. I think that's a very easy exit one gives them, that if everything is the same, then nothing is a problem. So propaganda to a certain extent, according to many far left people, every privately owned news platform is propaganda. Whether it is CNN, whether it is Fox, they're all the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I own a friend Jayashree. She looks at them as the same. But outright fake news is not propaganda. Propaganda can be done in a way by also reporting accurately, yet it being propaganda.
Yeah.
So I would not club it all as one. Outright fake news is a different kettle of fish. Propaganda is a much larger set. Fake news is a subset, which is the extreme subset of this. So,
And what we saw actually went beyond fake news
Yeah.
also. It was like a sasta film.
right.
Like a small whatever. Because you're right. Propaganda is intelligent and it's
means
needed.
It can be of many things. Propaganda is a very large term. I mean,
No,
what we are
I
talking about is
don't-
outright saying
I
that
don't know
Karachi
where
has
did
been
you
bombed.
say that I confused with both. What you were saying is stating the obvious. I think anecdotes are not a good way of looking at things. I generally dismiss them. But I am bringing one anecdote. Before this conflict, I was traveling in a metro and someone made this observation. He was having a casual chat with someone. So he said, ये तो न्यूज है लेकिन रियलिटी क्या है? Now this is something that we reserved for cinema. Like this is movie, but what is reality? So I think that hit more profound than it was, and I think it was not like he was critiquing a particular platform or something.
That's just
But
general.
the idea of what news had become.
But
But I think that's a very good way of putting it. And I think that's what most people felt. News ye hai, lekin reality hai.
No, but I think my question to anyone consuming news, and earlier it just was a few people who'd critique the media and take pot shots at them or do fact checks. Now, if you go online, everyone is doing it. Every regular bloke is making fun of news. My point is, if you cannot trust them at wartime, why should you trust them at peacetime? You see, once your credibility is gone, you can't say, actually, I only lie when I'm hungry. When I'm full, I don't lie. Why should anyone believe you? So I think once it's gone, it's gone. But now coming to the specifics of, what this conflict has achieved or not achieved. You've been covering defense. What do you make of the outcome? This ceasefire, has it been a face saver for both? And are we in the age of the Trumpization of foreign affairs, that you need not take what anyone says seriously? Like Trump, I don't think what he says, it's not like he will get upset or there'll be a foreign policy, a foreign affairs disaster if the Indian MEA says, no, Trump is lying. He doesn't care. He said what he's catering to his audience. We are catering to our audience. So, does US have a significant role to play? And does it even matter now? Because anyone can claim anything.
Broadly speaking, see, in those 4 days, see, May 10th in a way was a decisive thing which kind of crystallized a lot of things. The counter-strike on the morning of May 10th, I mean, compared to even the previous 3 days.
Where we hit the airbase and the
Bases,
cans.
yes, the 8 of them.
Yeah.
And we did hit bases before also in the earlier 2 days, but the hits on the 8th morning, the 8 bases which were hit, and which are actually like right in the heart of the Pakistan establishment, right? Rawalpindi, Islamabad, around that. That kind of was because that has not happened probably since 1971. See, you had Kargil, a limited conflict, which was only on the LOC,
Yeah.
localized. 2016-19 were again limited strikes. No, one was a surgical strike, one was an air strike, but they were all very, very limited strikes. This kind of took that to a different threshold. So in that way, from a military sense, it kind of set up a threshold, a different. It made a differential between the two countries in terms of military. You want to call it symmetry or asymmetry, which otherwise was, we normally typically said, okay, we had this, we get into typical bean counting, and okay, say, oh, Pakistan has this, we have this. But this kind of set the differential because it actually happened. I mean, it has not happened in a long time. So the military differential was set here on May 10th. I think that will remain at least for some time. It's a technological cycle. It's a development, catching up cycle. That it always happens. It's a continuous process. So that will go on. Probably how long we can debate it. But as of now, that's been set. That's one. I mean, from all accounts, from what was officially said, informally said, all the conversations in the talking to people who were involved or at least in the know of the system, they all say 7th when this happened, when we did the initial hits on the terror targets, we tried to reach out to the DGMO. A message was sent. They refused to speak. They said we'll wait for a response. But 10th they actually sent a message saying we would like to speak. So because the thing is also that was the only form of communication happening. When whatever message was sent between the two countries was the DGMOs on the established hotline which exists between the two countries. There was no diplomatic, there's no political. Even the claims from Pakistan that the NSAs was speaking, even that was denied. They said there's no conversation between.
Yeah, that
at
was
any level.
there on the Express front page also, that both NSAs have kind of
officials here have said there was no conversation at all. That's Pakistan said that. So people have reported that's one thing, but the point is it was not confirmed, and eventually later it was denied. It said there was no conversation, and DGMOs was only line of conversation. 10th they actually reached out. In fact, as per different accounts, 1 p.m. on the May 10th they sent a message that they want to speak to our DGMO. Anyway, our DGMO was actually in a meeting, so he couldn't. So eventually they spoke at 3:35 that day, and the understanding came into effect at 5 p.m. So in between was where Trump tweeted.
And also 8 o'clock was PM Modi's address, 7:30 he payloaded something
the
else.
next day. Yeah.
It was as if he was timing his tweets and his statements just to counter Modi beforehand.
So the tweet came in between. So when after the conversation and before it actually came into effect. Literally just before it came into effect.
So so obviously he knew about it if he could tweet it with confidence. And he could only know about it if someone from the US established was involved in those peace talks. Otherwise, how would he know?
The other way around. No.
Pakistan may have been involving them.
Exactly. It doesn't mean they have to be in between, right? Someone, one side can be informing them.
Right.
And that actually seems to be the case.
Pakistan very clearly thanked
on May
them.
10th.
They thanked USA.
They thanked US.
On May 10th after the morning, the incidents of the morning or sequence of what happened, Pakistan reached out to, one was the message to us, which was a little later, but they did reach out to, various quarters, US being among the first ones. Because they sought their mediation or the help to convey a message, whatever was that, that happened. Then they reached out to us formally to us through the military channel. So US was in the loop. They must have been updating them.
From a foreign policy point of view, does anything matter, at least in the age of Trump? Like, no one's going to really mind anything. It's everyone watch out for yourselves. Is there any foreign policy gain or loss? Like, one thing, of course, which the media will not talk about, and I think it must be said, because if so much airtime and front page coverage was given to Modi as being this Vishwa Guru, that the whole world's leaders seek his advice, seek his help, and the photographs also very carefully choreographed when we hosted various conferences, and whatever the 7 or 8 countries leaders with him leading them, it was those photographs who shared, the ones that were sent by the PMO, which make him look as no significant country actually backed us. So this whole, and I myself have said here, I guess I've also fell for the propaganda, that the only thing that Modi, which I can say his government has done, is from a foreign policy point of view, we have kind of established a certain amount of heft or credibility the world over. Well, clearly not. If no one sprang to our defense. So is that mythology, can it be done away with? That Modi is a Vishwaguru who the whole world thinks is the most credible person on earth. In fact, Republic has this guy, something Vohra, he was a IFS officer. I remember back in the days of Doordarshan, he used to have this show where he used to talk to this puppet. And he had this his way of talking hasn't changed. He's a lot more unhinged now than he was then. When he went on to this phase that now all of Africa looks at Modi as their leader. I don't know whether you saw that. It was the most bizarre monologue. But that achievement, can we say there was any substance to that?
That's a matter of interpretation. But the point is, when the initial 22nd terror attack happened, literally kind of more or less all countries said, yes, India has the right to act on terror, That was the message. And of course, everyone is anticipating an attack. Yes. I don't think literally everyone, all of us also waiting. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Sure.
That was broadly, both here and across, that was actually the case. Because we had a lot of people asking, oh, when do you think? I said, we don't know, But that's one. When the actual thing happened, when on 6th, 7th, when the hit happened, the question was, how will it go? What will happen next? How will it what is the escalation or escalator matrix? Where will it go? Because the way it was, the 9 targets, whatever was done. And then when things started going off, the question was, now where will you end it, or what is the off-ramp for either of them?
What's the honorable exit?
Where will you find a way out? And probably after 2 days, I think, even after the strike, more or less everyone said we acknowledge in a way they said we acknowledge the strikes on the terror targets, or we accept India's right to hit terror. So that in a way, the focus on terror was there, and that's exactly what our statements also kind of framed it. Said we were especially looking at,
and in fact we
terror.
Categorically said that we are not going for any military installation
or civil. It's purely terror targets. So that's kind of that line maintained, and the world also broadly everyone said, yes, we understand you're right. So when it went to the next 2 days after, then that's when the most countries started saying, oh, now it's we want for the peace of the stability of the region, peace in the region, we should kind of find a way out, or not to escalate, and find a means to
but the only out and out support statements were Turkey and China in support of Pakistan, right? No one else has really taken a position.
Azerbaijan, yes.
Yeah.
They've taken a position. No one else has taken a position one way or the other.
The three of them, yeah.
The 3 of them came firmly in support.
Right.
Broadly, everyone, in a way, it was that. I mean, they all said they're right to appreciate the terror, this thing, but then once things, or 2 days when, the counter strikes and counter strikes are going on military targets now, then they said, it's, going out of hand, or, it's not good for the region, so find a way out.
Okay, I just want to go on that side of the panel, but before that, one question, because I remember Manisha and I were discussing this upstairs, and neither of us are weapons experts. On the first day, like the night after the first drone attacks and all there was this news flash that 15 cities have been targeted, which included Ludhiana, Jalandhar, Chandigarh. I spoke to people in Chandigarh, they said. So I was like, on what basis have they mentioned these 15 cities? Because whatever they shot down was in Amritsar. So how can they decide that it's these 15 cities? Is it again careless reporting? No, or can they decide that from there this projectile is going to reach Ludhiana or Chandigarh even before it goes halfway? How does it work?
So the list of places was actually given by the army. They actually gave a statement saying these. Yeah, they were fired from all these. You when something is fired, you broadly know the trajectory.
Okay.
Yeah.
So see, all these projectiles you can actually try. As we read in school physics, trajectory is a parabola.
Yes.
It goes in a certain way. So you can actually map them. You have enough radars now, which what we call the weapon locating radars. If you go back, just a bit of anecdotally, during Kargil we don't have them. We when Pakistan was firing,
that technology wasn't there.
That we don't have that particular radar which could track that trajectory. So in fact that was one correction we did right after Kargil.
Right.
And that's one of the first military imports we did from the US. Once after Clinton's visit, weapon locating radars was one of the first things we bought from the US. It's a bit of anecdote. Now we build our own radars now. We actually
also build our own drones. NDTV very proudly said these drones that wreaked havoc were made by Adani. This Adani has withdrawn from this project. Adani has. So basically, this everything is happening is because of Adani account of NDTV.
So on the, on that, so the drones used were a mix of things.
Made by Adani.
One of them,
Well,
the Bangalore startup.
there were
is,
a
yeah.
few startups. Some of them were Israeli. There was some Polish also probably used because we have them, the warmates, and Israeli Herops and Harpies. They are loitering munitions. So they actually, you fire them, they hover over a target for a certain number of
Oh, I
hours,
see, okay.
and then they can just go and bump in. They have
It's
the
precision.
warhead.
I see.
So they are the vehicle as well as the warhead
see.
explosive. So they just go and hit
So
the
they're
target.
navigable.
Yeah. You can just guide them, and they're actually used for high value targets like say command centers, radars, and
Yeah, like Trump was
critical
I
installations.
don't know whether you saw that press conference in the UAE. He's just talking nonsense. He said, there are these drones and they can hit you. You can be hiding behind a tree, and it's going to catch you. It's going to get you. It'll blow up the tree. Like the tree will be gone. You'll be gone.
When you look at what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, the drone is killing tremendous numbers of people. You hide behind a tree and the drone comes down and it circles you with fire. You don't have a chance. The tree comes down also, by the way. It's so intense. You see these trees being knocked down like they're being sawed down by a top-of-the-line timberman like who? Sean Duffy. Do you know that Sean Duffy, the head of the Transportation Department, who's working right now on the airports and getting a system because Biden didn't do a thing?
The guy's, I think his press conference eminently watchable. But what do you make of the gains? I mean, everyone's gone back happy. The army in the Pakistan seems very thrilled, at least from what I see online on the influencers there, that he has established himself as this great patriot. Indian establishment is happy. We have taught them a lesson. Trump is happy. I have found world peace, made world peace, and Laura Loomer said he should be given the Nobel Peace Prize. Or has anyone gained anything special?
See, I think one obvious gain for India has that it has called out Pakistan's nuclear bluff. So also there were calculations in Delhi that what would be the ceiling for the escalatory ladder. So the point when we reach that escalatory ladder, where of course when you go for an operation, if you have 10 objectives, there would be some say unintended scenarios, something that you cannot control, and you will end up say achieving 6-7 objectives out of 10, 3 maybe not in your control. So I think at the end of the day, India would be happy with the result. Maybe they would have been happier if the narrative also flowed the same way. So first, nuclear bluff. Second, it's a good advertisement for India's weapon set. That also, I think West is more than it admits. It would study this warfare more closely later, because it was a very interesting warfare, and between two nuclear armed nations, and how India could do precise strikes and to a point where the escalatory ladder was within its assessment,
And also the defense system.
So by that, these for military objectives, okay. I think Trump's role here is more that of say giving a US narrative to kind of bilateral negotiation, which was in which he didn't have any part basically, but also giving a very say attractive topping to his transactional diplomacy, the trade being the centerpiece, and everything has to be done through trade and this transactional diplomacy. So he was more concerned with selling that point of view to the world, that I am this great transactionalist statesman. So that was there. If you remember, in 2019, in July, he had hinted at mediation in Kashmir, and in August, India abrogated Article 370. So if you go back to the newspaper, so that's the because of India's multi-alignment now, and for decades, US had a limited role in shaping our choices. In fact, S400, which proved to be a very, very worthwhile shield for us, it was acquired by India from Russia against all US opposition. US has this policy of countering American adversaries through Sanctions Act, CASART, what they say, and we went against that to acquire that, and it proved very handy in this. So that is, but what should be worrisome is that, and it has been through decades, that we live in a very hostile neighborhood, and we have to watch out for the East, the Bangladesh, because of the underpinnings there now of a Islamist regime, and the temptation for Pakistan to co-opt them to for very strategic regions is real, and China is of course there. So we are not, say, other great power aspirants who are not besieged with a very hostile neighborhood, and that should be a concern now. The eastern part, and also I think we are not, say, a established superpower, say like China, or a great military power like Russia, for whom the Western narratives or the world narratives does not matter. For China and Russia,
They don't care.
Don't give a damn what the Western newspapers are writing. They have reached that stage. So we are still very much, say, touchy about that. And how do we shape those narratives through different channels would be not, I'm not saying new channels, but other forms. That is one thing. We were very, very, say, conscious about before celebrating our second Independence Day in 1948 in August. We had our nuclear program going, and Atomic Energy Commission was established in, say, 1948. We went to war when Gandhi was alive. We were always aware of the hostile neighborhood. So first war, and in Parliament, Nehru made this a statement that if someone threatens us with nuclear weapons, for all his pacifism, Nehru said, the pious sentiments will not hold us back.
Sure.
So
that I guess to a certain extent he was realist. So Manisha,
Just a quick,
yes,
very quick point here. You talked of the S400s. I mean, just to just flag, appreciate the other the not talked about thing. S400 is among the top end of the pyramid in our air defense system. It's a long range. It did its job. It did a good job. But also, because we had waves and waves of drones coming in, the small, cheaper ones, but small ones, which, as the army said, were Turkish, the military Jap said. They were all taken on by the air defense guns. Some of them, the older ones, literally legacy guns, but they have been upgraded now. They are the ones who actually took down most of those small drones, because otherwise the cost benefit doesn't work. You can't shoot down a small, which costs probably $1,000 with a
S400.
$1 million missile. You can't do that. You can do it once, twice. You can't keep doing that. These are the ones which actually do that cost benefit.
I see.
And this is one of the lessons we learned from the war in Ukraine.
And these are made indigenously.
The guns were actually older ones,
Okay.
but we upgraded them locally. The guns, we had the guns for about 40 years now, 35 to 40 years. The old Zu L70, Zu 23 and the Shilkas. And that's one. And of course, then to add to that is the indigenously built Akash surface-to-air missile system, which is about 25 kilometers, considered short range in AD parlance, air defense parlance. That actually did a good job to take down some of the medium threats that came in.
Do you, make anything of the cliche that the markets don't lie, and in the context of that the market is the only quantifiable mechanism where the collective information and conscience or wisdom can tell you where things are going? So the share price of Rafale going down and that Chinese or whatever company going up, which makes the other...
Actually, want to add
Does
to
that does that actually tell us anything or not? Because for everything else, one says if the market has said something, there is some information there, because the market is a stock market, moves based on whatever information everybody has, that is factored into whatever movements happen. What do you make of that market movement?
That is an indicator of how much one-sided news is floating around to begin with. Because when the initial thing happened, Pakistan said, "Okay, we shot down these many things." I mean, each time one of their ministers spoke, he said 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
he
it
went
went
on
up till 5.
adding to it,
And the market moved.
and because there was no information coming from our side in that terms of whatever was it, even denial, limited, yes, no, whatever was that. So that became the article. So there was a lot of international media which took that and reported. So that probably
That's what
stock
moved the
indicator
market.
was that, because there was no other thing coming in. That was one of the things which said, oh, it happened. So to add to the other thing to that, let's move beyond that. One day we don't know the numbers. We'll wait for that. But moving beyond that, the 7th, 8th, 9th and the 10th, if anything, that actually shows that the Chinese air defense systems did not function or were not up to the mark. Because
we did hit.
More or less all your things hit. I mean, a few of them were shot, definitely, yes. A few.
We did hit the airfield.
Exactly.
There is photographic evidence of
a few
that.
were shot. Most of them hit their targets. And very precisely where they wanted to. And right in the heart of the capital. I mean, in their key locations, strategic locations. So that shows that the system did not really catch up. On the contrary, all your air defense, the networked system actually functioned.
They worked.
And again, one little thing to appreciate here is we have so many systems from so many countries. We have Israeli systems, we have Russian systems, we have Indian systems, we have smaller guns from Sweden, from some other things.
All of them.
So we have all that embedded into an Indian network. So, for example, the Air Force has this I-8 CCS. It's a command center, which is a node kind of a thing, which integrates every single thing into that. So that function, that really in real time gets information, tracks it, assigns who has to do what, depending on where the threat is, who is the closest.
And that worked well.
That, and then the army has its own system called Akash Tir, which is actually built by Bell, Bharat Electronics Limited. So that's the army system. So they talk to each other. The Akash Tir and IACCS talk to each other. So collectively the overall air defense which functions in layers, multiple layers, functioned fairly well.
So that should give some confidence to at least the Indian citizens at the borders.
So the two sides of this thing, how it performed on the other side and how it performed here. So it was there to see.
Couple of observations as someone who was really clued in for those 4 days. To me, things got really serious on May 9th, like you said, when we hit those two very sensitive bases, Noor Khan and Bolari
That was the morning of
Airbase.
10th, yeah.
Yeah. Morning of 10th, I think Pakistan gave intervening nights actually.
We hit in the early hours.
And it was interesting to see how this was panning out for these 4 days, because to my mind, and there's no way in which I can kind of authenticate it, but the war was actually also turning out to be a war of visuals, where it was not just about what the military was actually doing, but what you could also show to your home audience of what your military is doing. So India had enough proof in terms of what we were putting out, satellite imageries, but also videos coming in from Pakistan near Bahawalpur and all that. So there was enough visuals coming from Pakistan on what we had done. And to me, I could sense from May 8th, 9th onwards a real desperation from the side of Pakistan to have similar visuals from India, which they weren't getting because of air defense. So, and had we considered that we'd lost 2 jets, maybe it would have ended at that point, but we hadn't. And Pakistan didn't have any proof for really saying, what had happened, except for saying that we had done this. And May 9th, as just an observer, it seemed like they were in a real weak footing. And there was a sense of desperation. And then there was this presser, which I think Sikandar Kirmani, who's a journalist based in Pakistan, he put out this really ominous thing that Pakistan has now declared war. I think 10 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, there was this meet, and now this is real. And then for suddenly, by the evening of it to be called out when we were on a stronger footing, at least from what it appeared to be, seemed very strange and inexplicable. Because Pakistan by 10th morning seemed like really desperate to act. So I would really want to know for real what happened between that morning and afternoon for the ceasefire to suddenly be announced. And I think I'll agree with Anand and him on broadly what was said about what we had achieved in terms of precision strikes and all that. So when we were on a strong footing, why did we kind of agree to this sudden ceasefire? And after the ceasefire, we seem to have really lost the narrative, to my mind, because we had, Vikram Misri come and announce, very quickly left. He was heavily trolled. There was sort of anger. But I think diplomatically, we didn't supplement what army had achieved, I feel. Like, we couldn't really put our point across on what had we achieved, what had we done, and why it ended. And clearly, and I think the next day then, with the meeting which you attended, where you asked a question, there was some damage control. But to me, it just felt like the military was not supplemented with political and diplomatic thinking. The military achieved what it had to, but the politics of it, the diplomacy of it, to me, was really lost. I couldn't understand. And today, actually, the Hindu reports that the government wants to do an all-party delegation and send it across the world in different countries and make our case. So clearly, there's an understanding within the government also that we couldn't make our case. What did we really tell the world with what we had done? And it all got, I think, mixed in this.
Yeah, but I mean, it's, I think, a bit rich of Mr. Modi's government now to want an all-party delegation, because when this conflict started, the kind of messaging that BJP handles, official BJP handles, are putting out, and they were quoting his speech. I don't know whether that speech was from now or earlier, that, this happened in the UPA time, they couldn't do anything, they were weak, now suddenly want an all-party delegation. I just find that the churlishness of, and everyone chadhos on the opposition if they make one tweet here. As policy, Mr. Modi attacking, and I refuse to believe that the BJP handles are acting autonomously. That, they
got a lot of flag because in the middle of it, they put out a tweet, BJP, right when the operations was happening, of kind of milking it. And even the right wing was pretty upset.
Yeah, they were milking it, and they were putting out speeches trashing the UPA. So I don't understand how you can do that on one hand, and then want an all-party meet to go across and make your case.
And Owaisi will be part of it.
I mean, I just find it...
One more thing I wanted to add was this new normal that we are saying, to my mind, announcing that now every act of terror will be an act of war.
What does that mean?
And within 2 hours, there is a clear kind of violation where... So, putting that out when we haven't even ascertained what we have achieved in those 4 days, and where do we... I mean, can we really afford to have an act of war every time a terror attack happens? And secondly, like, the new normal of the earlier tensions would happen, there'd be shelling along LOC. Is the new normal now drones coming into Punjab? Because if we escalate...
Dinakar, what do you make of that?
Which is actually putting a lot of states in a sense of insecurity.
Was the military action followed by foreign policy?
So, that bit of why did we do this? So, if you actually see from day one, what was said or communicated from our side was very clear, in the sense they said, we hit the targets, we are done.
Yeah, we don't want anything more.
And it was communicated. Then responded, said we'll hit. So, we only hit back. See, it was Pakistan from a military sense. So, Pakistan hit on military and civilian targets, so we hit back. They hit, we hit back. So, it was actually a action and counter-action. And it stopped on the morning of May 10th. And every time it actually kind of has grown in magnitude. Every single thing. So that round of strike and counter-strike was over on the May 10th. So, when they said, okay, we are done, we said we are done. So, and again, just to add...
But it'll be strange for Pakistan to say we are done, because I think we were at a much...
Definitely.
I mean, see, they had not done anything.
They came to that, pretty much they reached out because they were being hit hard.
Yeah.
And to add to that, see, even in those 3 days of strikes, we were very calibrated in what we hit. We were not looking at, say, annihilating their fleets or, that. It was all strategic messaging. See, the ordnance fell close to their strategic plans division. That was the messaging. On their critical runways, we hit them. It was a message. We did not really
damage, but we sent a message.
Destroy assets altogether. That was not the intent, and we did not do that. We probably could have, we were already doing it, drop a few more ordnance, just take out their entire fleets, maybe, but we didn't do that in the first place.
Would that have been a smart thing to do, according to you?
Maybe not. I'll leave it for the military planners. But
because there are a lot of
my point is, so even in the action, our intent was very clear. I mean, we did not really do that bit in the first place. So on the 10th, we said, okay, we are done. We said, we ended it on the same note. And to back that, the action was there to see from a military sense,
I get India, but I don't know. I mean, Pakistan to me doesn't seem like a stable, sane country. And their leadership doesn't seem, I mean, to me, it is a very volatile...
I think this is a...
I really want to know what really happened.
But this is a cliche that, I mean...
And it seems unlikely it happened without America at least telling them to...
No, see, Rubio called Secretary of State, US Secretary of State, called Pakistan's army chief. So that was quite probably that would have been one, because you knew it was actually scaling up. The magnitude of the scale of exchanges were actually growing up. They're multiplying, not just, it's not a linear, it's a multiplication factor. So that was one probably where, the Secretary of State spoke, trying to make some sense. And then also that the actions of 10th made Pakistan also reach out and say, okay, I think now we should stop somewhere. It
Anyway,
actually was
that's beyond, that'll only come out
I
only
mean, yeah,
at
speculation.
some stage, but yeah, this is what
But after
broadly what it
this,
seems.
for America to just put out those statements and Trump, even if we don't want to take him seriously, to continuously drive in this message that these are two errant kids fighting with each other and I am the teacher. That
see,
was just
that
disaster for
equating
us.
India and Pakistan is, I think, a messaging disaster for us. And what you're saying, Pakistan is not a serious country. This I remember from Musharraf's time, and some commentators, serious commentators, and there used to be a few back then who used to come on panels, used to say that Musharraf is not he used to call him the CEO, right? He's not the CEO of Pakistan. He's the CEO of Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, and to some extent Pindi, Rawalpindi. That is where there is the influence. Bukti used to run his own stuff. They had his own court. They had their own jails. The central government of Pakistan could not even go there to collect taxes. Balochistan was doing its own thing. Who was that guy? That lion or the tiger of the who was killed, who was an ally of India. NWFP was fighting. I'm terrible with names. Masood, correct. He was so actually
Northern Lands.
It's not Northern Lands, correct. The Northern Lands. So it was clear that Pakistan is basically these 3.5 cities where they have control. Now, I don't see that it's become any better since then. It's still 3.5 cities. So yes, it's not a serious country. Of course, Bukti is not as influential as he used to be back then. He is not even alive anymore. So I don't know whether he's running his own jails, his own courts and his own tax system. Masood died. But yeah, it has never been together. India is a nation, a democratic nation. And the fact that we cannot distinguish that, I think, is a huge failing.
I think, and let's not forget that the 4 terrorists who came in shot, we have not been able to catch them. So every terror attack cannot be about our muscular strength against Pakistan. It has to at some point also be about internal accountability. Why have we not been able to catch them? What was the intelligence failure that happened for this to take place in the first place in the heart of the valley? So those questions remain.
Also, see, the West's prism of seeing terrorism has not been, say, very uniform. So, for not all will admit, but there is a sense that terrorism against India is somehow historically rooted, is their historical problem, and terrorism in the West is somehow interference with our way of life. And this, they have, see, the Syrian president who was a US and UN designated terrorist just 6 months ago, Trump met him, Macron met him. And so I think the changing definition of what is terrorism and that for real politics, and this is how national interests take center stage in international politics, and we have to be very, very realistic in our assessment of. I think Trump would. I was also expecting Trump to say that, like something saying like that. He was a great terrorist. He was a great terrorist.
He called this guy handsome. Handsome young man
with a strong past. A strong past means terrorism, and he is a young attractive fellow. So something like that. You could have expected to say the way he says that he was a great terrorist, a beautiful one. Some say perhaps the best ever.
And it's true. India, Pakistan is 1,000 years.
It is his
1,500, not 1,000.
Every time he says 1,000 years.
So he somehow he concludes many things like some say the best ever.
Yeah, best ever. He does that often. But yeah, so Dinakar, your closing thoughts and recommendation that you think might enrich the lives of our viewers and listeners.
Well, that's actually the toughest question, I guess. But actually, just away from this, slightly on a different tangent from India and Pakistan, or there was actually an interesting report. I mean, I kept it there. I was scrolling through in the last few days. One on shipping. We not something, the maritime aspect is we did not talk about. So I'll just flag that just for a broader, larger interest of how things or the world is shaping up. There was an interesting report by CSIS, the think tank, US think tank, on how China is now literally leads the global shipping. In fact, I was actually trying to pull that so I can read one little line which sums it up all, for us, and so that I can interest the readers as well.
Yes.
To take a look and, just understand, which is something which get lost. We don't realize. So we know now the Chinese Navy is the world's largest navy in numbers. It has overtaken the US, by the way, in terms of absolute numbers. In capability, etc., is a different matter, but in sheer numbers, yes. So there's one single line here. This is about the commercial shipbuilding. So in a way, when we differentiate between commercial and military, but in China, the shipyards do both. I mean, broadly, everyone can do everything.
If you have the technology,
so there's a bit of So it's a kind of a dual use or dual area, So you can't differentiate sometimes. So that also gives a opacity into the system. You can't differentiate, till it's too late, probably. Just one line from this. The China State Shipbuilding Corporation, the world's biggest shipbuilding group, the firm built more commercial vessels by tonnage in 2024 than the entire US shipbuilding industry has built since the end of World War II.
Whoa.
That line should say it all,
And they're firmly with Pakistan, so we should really
No,
think.
I mean,
but the scale of how they produce, how much iron must they be using, and the speed at which they manufacture.
That's exactly why I read that line. No, that sums it up.
Yeah.
Put that in the gravity of what it is.
That's insane.
That's something
since World War II, they built more in 1 year.
2024.
Dude, that is insane. And that is from a report.
It's a CSIS think tank.
I see. Wow.
Center for Strategic and International Studies. They did a report. It came about a month or so back in March.
So that's something to think about. But thank you so much, Dinakar, for making the time. And do read his reports. The link is in the show notes. We will be moving on to the feedback and what our audience has to say about Newslaundry, but we will not bore Dinakar with that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate your coming here.
Thank you.
India has destroyed. Wait, no, I take that back.
Karachi port has been... hold on, not yet. Maybe soon.
A Pakistani pilot has been... oh no, he hasn't. Never mind.
Okay, jokes aside, we know you're fed up, and so were we.
Over the past few days, we've watched rumor after rumor dressed up as news. TV studios became fantasy land. It was embarrassing to watch.
Fact checkers had to step in just to tell you what is not happening, while you were left asking what on earth is actually going on.
So we decided to step in. We asked questions. We verified. We reported. We produced daily bulletins with verified facts.
We sent our reporters, Nidhi and Anmol, to villages along the line of control to speak to people who are living this conflict.
No chest thumping, no countdowns to missile launches, just journalism documenting what conflict really looks like on the ground with people.
We tried our best to stay true to our mission of serving the public. But let me ask you this. If you can't trust the loudest voices in our media during war, why should you trust them during peace?
The truth deserves better, and so do you.
If you like our effort to stay true to our core principles of journalism, scan the QR code on your screen or go to newslaundry.com/subscription or go to thenewsminute.com/subscription. Pay to keep journalism independent, credible and ad-free.
Because performance is free, propaganda is free, but the truth, that needs your support. You need to support a media that does not take funds from governments and corporations and that stays true to public interest.
The public must support public interest journalism. Will you?
Now we can move on to the feedback from our subscribers. We only entertain the feedback from subscribers. So if you're a subscriber and want to tell us what we can do better, what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right, or just what you'd like us to feature, write to us at podcasts@newslaundry.com. I repeat, podcasts@newslaundry.com. You can click in the link below and you'll have a pop-up where you can give your feedback. Please keep it limited to below 150 words so we can include as many mails as possible. As per our new system, one person will curate 4 or 5 mails for the week, And the rest of the mails we will read in one episode every 6 weeks. And we are recording that next week on Monday, and we have over 50 or 60 mails. So we shall address everybody who hasn't been addressed so far. Today's mails are curated by me, Abhinandan Sekhri. The ones that we are not reading and have been put aside for reading next week in this Hafta special is Shrikant, Salman, Simar, Aditya, Arush, Orisha, Nithila, Atin, Peri, Saiteja, Arif, Harkirat, Kezia, and 2 anonymous letters. So this week's emails, this is by Shamandeep Kaur. Hello people at Newslaundry, I'm 27, living in Canada, originally from Punjab, just 16 kilometers from Dera Baba Nanak border. Since the May 7th attack, it's been hard to trust any narrative. India claims Operation Sindoor only targeted terrorist sites, while videos and even anti-establishment, anti-army Pakistani voices suggest civilian areas were hit. It's confusing. Both sides are telling entirely different stories. What disturbs me most was seeing people in India celebrating alleged civilian deaths with memes and happy Diwali messages. That level of hatred is heartbreaking. I truly trust your platform for facts and balanced analysis. I'm waiting for the next Hafta to understand the reality beyond the noise. Also, outside the social media frenzy and jingoistic TV coverage, do you really think families near the border like mine should seriously consider relocating? I actually included this because it's heartbreaking, and this ties in with what you were saying, this fake news and events. There are people who have families around the border, and this, we should not keep fighting, bomb them, happy Diwali. This, just like Israel used to have those watch parties, watching bombs drop onto Gaza. I think it's vile. I personally think people who advocate I'm on a few groups, so they say, why should we be scared of nuclear war? And I say this with the greatest amount.
Why should we be scared of nuclear war?
Yeah, I say this with a great amount of responsibility. I think generally people who have really miserable lives, who are really unhappy, are deeply depressed, who have nothing to look forward to in life, are the ones who actually advocate, let's keep fighting, let's go for nuclear war. I don't think anyone who has an iota of something to look forward to in life would actually have that view. And unfortunately, most people who are loudest about this are miserable. This is their catharsis. So I really feel for you. I hope your family is safe. We've put out some reports from Kashmir. We have reporters
from
there.
LOC, from Jammu, from Poonch Rajouri. So we put out a lot of reports, and in fact, this is what exactly one of the person who lost his chacha, I think, said that everyone who wants a war in Delhi, Bombay should relocate to here, and we'll go there. And then you guys can have your war. But on the Pakistani claim of civilians, I think what they have said is basically that where we struck the Markaz and the Bahawalpur camp, those people there who died were civilians. But we have done a story on how Masood Azhar was present at those funerals, and the very point of having terrorists or JEM cadres is that they can conveniently be civilians and then they can conveniently be terrorists as and when needed. So I have not seen any credible information of houses or actual civilians dead. What the information seems to be coming is that people within those markazes were civilians, and of course like Masood Azhar's sister and whatever nephew.
But it is not unthinkable that civilian casualties would happen. Means that even if you are very precise, that you take into account some what is cynically called collateral damage, but it is also we need better border protection, because I don't think that war is out of question with such a hostile neighborhood, but better border protection. National communities in all these hostile neighborhood will find reasons to go to war if or a low intensity warfare with each other. So that is not out of question. That will happen in future also, but better border protection, and it is a fate that somehow dawns upon the border communities. So there were meetings, I think, in early, say, 2012 or 13 about putting a better border protection force, but that has not gained momentum.
In Nidhi's report, one of the very key, Nidhi and Anmol both are there at some of these border villages that had casualties. The key concern and complaint there was that we need bunkers. Shelling deaths are easily avoidable if there's a siren mechanism and you go into your bunkers. So they don't have that. The ones that were made get filled up with water, they're not usable. And there's no good medical care. In a lot of these areas, there isn't like enough medical care timely. So those things at least have to be fixed. And if we were doing a mock drill in Delhi where people were whatever hiding, putting chart paper, switching off their lights, there has to be much better preparations for a mock drill for these villages with proper, like if a siren goes off, there should be a bunker that you can go into.
Yeah, which clearly there isn't. This mail is from Rohini. Are there any NL Senas for the current political situation or a way to donate directly? I'm already in the middle of an active subscription. I'd like to contribute to NL TNM's coverage of India-Pakistan conflict. Rohini, actually, thank you so much. Here's a QR code. You can contribute. We actually discussed when we were sending our reporters to Kashmir whether we should have an NL Sena, but we just thought it would be a little distasteful to have an NL Sena to cover the war because it could be interpreted as milking the war for subscriptions. So actually we discussed this. So we said, let's just send them. Those who want to contribute can contribute. But I didn't want to put out an NL Sena specifically for this. And I mean, it's unfortunate we have to be so self-conscious, but since everybody milks it in different ways and we don't take ads, I'm glad you sent this email. So there's your QR code. Anyone who does want to contribute, feel free to flash this QR code. Thank you.
Yogesh says, hello, thanks for doing fact-based reporting on India-Pak escalation. This is great help during this phase of bombardment of misinformation. Can you also add a page of live updates on your website? Also, I'll suggest a detailed report on weapons system used by both sides. Keep up the good work. We do have a piece on the Turkish angle to the weapon system that's up today.
Yeah.
But putting a detail, I mean, it's not really our space. But there's plenty of good work. I'll give you some suggestions on what to read on this. Sachin says, hi everyone, this is my first time writing a letter. Great job on the show. Keep it up. I want to respond to Jayashree's point about why people seem to be cheering for war and why there's no anti-war voice in India. I think that misses the broader sentiment. The government and defense forces have clearly stated that these are not acts of war but targeted strikes against terror camps. If the other side chooses to escalate, we will respond. Simple as that. There was a terror attack and we hit back at those responsible. It's about accountability. We're not celebrating war, we're supporting justice. Actions have consequences and this message needed to be sent. They started it, not us. Mahindra says, hello NL team. The idea that we support war when female soldiers are centered reflects a troubling narrative.
I didn't get that. What is this we support when female soldiers are centered, matlab?
Maybe because the two spokespersons were women officers. So it kind of...
I see.
We support it because they are there. Reflects a troubling narrative where equality is reduced to access to violence. I don't know what that means. Framing female soldiers as symbols of progress risks betraying feminism's deeper goals. We should scorn at the pink washing of war, not be inspired by it. Representation isn't liberation if it simply replicates the same brutal systems. True progress challenges the need for war itself, not just who fight it. Representation in warfare doesn't redeem militarism. I hope NL reflects more critically on this framing. Here's an inspiring dialogue between leftists from both sides of the border that offers a path towards avoiding war altogether, not just feeling progressive when women participate in it.
So, Mahendra, I mean, it's very beautifully worded, and I think 117 words you've captured pretty complex thoughts. So, congratulations on your writing skills. I kind of agree with you on the pink washing, but I don't think I think in nation states, especially in the world we live in, conflict is inevitable. I mean, and the inevitability of conflict cannot be wished away by, people who want peace on both sides. And I don't make fun of those people like some do. I think it's important to have those. I'd rather make fun of people who actually advocate war, let's go. They don't want a ceasefire. But once that is there, I think the messaging, the optics matter. And the optics need not necessarily always reflect the reality, representation. I mean, Obama as president didn't accurately reflect race relations in America. Mayawati as chief minister didn't accurately reflect caste relations in UP. But I think it matters. I wouldn't just, completely ignore that. And even if it matters a little bit, I mean, that's not to endorse violence. That's my view. Because, he's talking about what we were discussing last time.
Yeah, women officers. Anand, I think next letter you should see. Manas Mishra has said, hello all. तमाम बड़े छोटे राष्ट्रीय मुद्दों के बीच सबसे अहम सवाल है कि आनंद सर किसको याद करते रहते हैं?
So these are the photographs that Banas has written that Anand is always deep in thought on the discussion.
So,
So
yeah,
what are you thinking of, Anand?
Love his views on the podcast and his opinion articles as well.
No,
He
no,
loves your
I'm-
opinion articles now. You can't say that I won't write.
No, means that's of course a flawed posture, and that should not be there. But I think at this age, I find that I lose concentration when I look at the person to who is talking out to whom I am talking. So, in fact, when I am not looking at the person who is talking, I concentrate more on what he is saying. So that's a flawed posture. That's a bad optic. But that is how I am.
And Jaisal has written a 28-word mail. I have a request. Please play this anti-war poem by Sahil Ludhianvi at the end of the next hafta if possible. Jaisal, we shall do that. We shall replace the poem you recommended with our customary song. But before that, I'd get the recommendation from the rest of the panel. Anand, you want to go
So
first?
I am recommending two books. One book, one report. One is by John Meisner. He is a renowned political scientist. So in 2017, he came up with this book, which now very much pictures the geopolitics and international relations. So it was the Great Delusion and the realities of world politics. So his take was that in post-Cold War, that America got into the delusion of liberal empire, and that was just a top dressing, but the national interests, when they lost sight of and it hit them badly, and they went back to that, and that is how he is basically addressing the American policymakers, that how you have to be very realistically anchored to world realities, that you are, but you have also to show that you are. So and that is also a good messaging for other countries, because we can't be burying our head in say sand and not look at the geopolitical realities staring us. And of course it is oversimplification of the book. He has given a lot of empirical studies to get to this point, and so that's one. It's a good take on in geopolitics of the age we are living in. And second is last week there was, or this early this week, there was this study in Nature Geoscience, and which tried to predict the time when life on Earth will end, and it's 1 billion years. So that the hydrogen will somehow, not somehow, it has explained. I have very limited scientific knowledge to decode that. So so hydrogen will fuse into helium, and the luminosity of the sun will be so great that the oxygen of Earth's atmosphere will deplete, and life will not be possible. And in different phases, that will be true for other planets also. So that is a very humbling information to have, that all life on Earth will end in 1 billion years. Not only your life, but everyone.
Yeah, scary thought, no?
Yes.
No, 1 billion years is too late.
So,
Anyway, so since there was a request to write a piece on weapons and all use, I think there's a very good piece by Aditya Ramanathan of Takshila Institute in the Times of India. He's given a very good, clear chronology of the tit for tat that happened. And very simple words, you can just understand what happened over those 4 days if you're still confused. I think the NYT has a good piece with a kind of a stupid headline, I think. But the piece broadly talks about India's claims of what it hit and the proof for it. I think that's also instructive. There is a very good piece that our colleagues have done on this one man who died in Pakistani shelling, and he was termed a terrorist, and the havoc that played with his life, with his relatives' lives, who had to deal with his death, and then also this propaganda, how fragile it is there for people to be just called Lashkar terrorists, and the difficulty that local reporters faced there because the channels in Delhi did this. They were at the receiving end of anger of the community and the village. They were very surprised at why the channels had done this without asking them, because they are the boots on the ground. They would know this person. So I think it's a very important piece to look at, to understand the recklessness with which many of these media organizations operate and the sheer damage they do. Like what I said in the beginning, these are not nationalist medias. The communities living there are really important to the armed forces there because they help in many ways. And they're really the backbone for us there. To turn them against us and to kind of label them as terrorists is a huge disservice to national interest, which these guys have done, and they haven't apologized. So please read that very carefully. We also have very good video reports from there by Anmol, because one complaint was that these voices are missing from the excitement around war.
Yeah.
So these voices must be heard to truly understand.
This
and it is
too,
scary. It
and
is
this
very
too is
scary.
part of the news. You know, you can't just say this should be ignored and we'll only
Yeah.
do the rah.
No, and it is very scary, you know, how they describe what happened when a shelling hit them, how they've seen their relatives being blown up, the kind of ways in which they've seen bodies lying around them. This is very, very scary for any people to go through. So it's important to focus on it.
I'd recommend a film called No Man's Land. It was made in 2001. It is set in the Serbo-Croatian, I think the Bosnian conflict. It was beautifully made. It won a bunch of awards. And I just think it was such a, you know, great film about war, and good films about war should be seen, I think. It makes you understand it better than our so-called news. So with that, I'd like to thank our wonderful producer Priyali, our sound recordist Anil, Manisha, Anand, and we shall leave you with the recommendation from our subscriber instead of a song. JSL says we should sign off with this poem by Sal Ludhianvi. So here it is. Have a good week.